at that emotion.
Around the outside. It's time to bring the action.
Yeah, welcome to another episode of SMX Insider. We are your insiders, Jason Weigandt and Daniel Blair. We're both on site for Monster Energy AMA Supercross and the SuperMotocross World Championship day race at Nashville. Great vibes. It's becoming the city to go to, except a pall was put over the whole thing one lap into our 450 program with what is essentially the elimination of Cooper Webb's attempt to win this championship. And that hurts in so many ways, more than one for sure.
Yeah, Nashville was all over the place, I think, emotion-wise. It starts out, like you said, great vibe. Everyone was super energetic to be back in Nashville. And then it seemed like right away we got that gut punch with Cooper Webb's crash. And, you know, we're always invested in the racing and the championship, but that was one of those moments for me, Weege, where it was just about the person. You know, I was at the Alpine Star medic unit, you know, with the TV crew, watching him go through everything. And sometimes you just got to separate and just, man, it was really, really hard to do that. Cooper, obviously, we know now he's posted on social media. He's doing a lot better, but he's going to be out for some time. But that was a very, very scary moment. So, yeah, the vibes were good, and then all of a sudden, they weren't.
Yeah, obviously, at that point, once he didn't get up quickly, you shift from how is this going to affect the points to how is it going to affect Cooper Webb, the person. Sounds like just a big concussion, but he's already said he's out for the rest of Supercross, so that's bad. Chase Sexton ends up winning the race. That's good. But the best news of all is this crowning of the comeback story for Hunter Lawrence. And I've been saying it over and over. The Lawrence brothers have been so good and so hyped for so long. I think we tend to forget how far they have come to get to this point, and especially for Hunter. And he let all of that out when he crossed the finish line with a win and the title.
It was awesome, and there's no better way to win the championship than win the race, too. I think that's a clear sign of someone that truly believes they're the dominant rider in the class, which he has been. And you're right, every championship has its own story. And this one's really, really cool because you're talking about a guy who there was some hype coming over from the MXGPs that maybe he was going to be, you know, something special. And then it started out so terribly for him that you start wondering, well, maybe he's going to be one of the ones that don't work out. And now to put together 3 seasons like he has, I mean, he went second in points, and now all these wins leads to his first championship. It's like the emotions bounce back at that point, and then we were all celebrating such a rad moment. But yeah, Nashville, a lot of fun before, a lot of fun after, but during the racing, I felt like the emotions, they started out low, they ended out high, and that's Supercross racing for you.
It's big interview time here on SMX Insider, joined by Nate Ryan, one of my favorite motorsports reporters, now with NBC Motorsports. But I know you're probably known more for the NASCAR and IndyCar beat, sports cars and everything like that, but you've been a Supercross guy forever, like before you were even with NBC. So we go way back. I know you're a big fan of the sport, and you got to attend the race at Nashville. So what did you see, and what do you think of the 2023 season?
Well, I was pleased to find, Weege, that Supercross was exactly how I left it. The last time I was there, you mentioned, was Atlanta in 2017, I believe. Georgia Dome, that's actually the third time I had covered Supercross at the Georgia Dome. This time it was for NASCAR. But I'll never forget my first time at the Georgia Dome, 2010, the rider intros, the pyrotechnics, the event, the spectacle. It was amazing. And I got to follow around Ricky Carmichael that day and watch the literal Dale Earnhardt Pied Piper of Supercross just lead this incredible demographic, all these fans just following through the paddock area. And what I saw in Nashville this past weekend with NASCAR and NBC analyst Steve Woodhart, who was attending his first Supercross race, very similar to what I remember from 10 years ago when I was at Supercross. And I think that the demographics there are demographics that other racing series that I cover, NASCAR in particular, they would salivate over having all those young kids and families attending one of their races the way you get for Supercross races. I heard that there were nearly 30,000 people who were approved to go through the paddock area at Supercross in Nashville this past weekend. And that just made my jaw drop because, I mean, not only would that just be a great crowd for a race, but to have that many people touching and seeing and feeling everything that your sport has to offer in terms of those wonderful motorcycles, really, really impressive.
It's been a pretty exciting year on the track as well. What have you seen?
Yeah, I do follow it weekly. I do our how to watch post for NBCSports.com/motors every week. Of course, Dan Beaver does our weekly coverage, one of our freelancers. He does a great job. But yeah, I'm always fascinated by the rivalries in Supercross. And to go back to that Georgia Dome experience, I can remember the 2011 race, James Stewart versus Chad Reed. And one of the greatest races I've seen all time. Like, forget the racing series. And that was built on this rivalry of Stewart versus Reed. And so I've been fascinated this year, 2023, by the Supercross 450 season, in that you've had a three-way rider battle with Tomac and Webb and Sexton. But it's been a little bit different in that, like, it seems like you haven't had the mind games that you've had with Stewart Reed, or a couple of years ago when it was Cooper Webb versus Ken Roxon. So it's been a different kind of rivalry. And I thought it was interesting, listening to you and Will Christian and James Stewart and our other members of the Supercross broadcast team talking about what they were expecting from Cooper Webb coming into this race. It sounded like he had kind of exhausted his resources of being able to play a mental game with Eli Tomac, and he was going to throw whatever he had at him. And it seemed like the start of that heat race, Cooper Webb tried to throw something at Eli Tomac that didn't really work on that first lap coming out of the gate, and then he lost it in the next corner. So yeah, it was interesting. And again, I think that's what I think is great about Supercross, is that you have those rider rivalries. Sometimes they're a little bit more controversial, contentious. Sometimes, unfortunately, have injuries like you had in Nashville. But I think that's what really makes this sport so alluring.
Yeah, no doubt. And Webb, I talked to his mechanic on Friday, and he said, we have to win races. We have to come out super aggressive. He did. But that's the double-edged sword of racing, right? You talk about it on your podcast, NBC and NASCAR, every week. When you're pushing the edge, mistakes happen sometimes. It's not intentional. It's just the way it goes. But this is a much longer season this year. We are going to have playoffs, SuperMotocross World Championships at the end of the year. This is something you've had in NASCAR for a long time now. Format's changed a bit here and there. But how has the dynamic of NASCAR changed from what you've seen with playoffs? And what do you think that might lead to for this sport?
It's changed at 180 degrees, Weege. And I mean, now you have a true regular season and a true postseason, a true playoffs in NASCAR. And that format is now entering year 10, which on one hand, it feels like I can remember them announcing, it's entering year 20.
Well, 10 of the current elimination style. Yes.
Exactly. Entering year 10 of the current format. The Chase, which was the original playoff format, which essentially cordoned off the final 10 races as its own postseason. That started in 2004. But yes, this elimination style knockout round format where you have 3 races every round, that started in 2014. And it's definitely changed, I think, the competition in NASCAR region. I think we're certainly going to see that in Supercross. It's funny. I can remember having you on the NASCAR and NBC podcast in this very studio where I'm taping right now 6 years ago, when NASCAR was just moving into the stage racing era.
Right.
And you were predicting then that Supercross was going to go to a playoff. And I don't think in late 2016 we could imagine what it's actually going to become now, with having Supercross and Motocross melded and having this postseason 3-race playoff between both series. I think it's great. I think that sometimes maybe it has been in the past a little bit confusing to sort of explain to people the difference between Supercross and outdoors. To bring all of that together and to incentivize it in a way to have the riders go all the way through and race hellbent for leather pretty much every week for several months, all the way through that championship in Charlotte and LA and Chicago. I think it's going to be great for Supercross.
Oh boy, can't wait to get there. It's a long way off. I'm sure you'll be helping us cover it. But anyway, good to have you at a race again. Anytime. Glad to have you.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Weege.
Yep. And don't forget, as much as we love the fact that you love our show, you can get more analysis courtesy of none other than Ricky Carmichael and Ryan Villapoto as they break down the Super Motocross action each week on their Title 24 podcast. You can find it on Peacock, the Motorsports and NBC YouTube channel, or wherever you get your favorite pods. Time for our 30-second board. Hot topics in the Super Motocross World Championship. We'll start with the good deeds. Ryan Dungey, we all know, one of the nicest guys walking the face of the earth, also happens to be a multi-time motocross and supercross champ. His foundation, we've always known his involvement with St. Jude, and we certainly love that, and the sport supports that. But All Kids Bike, that was new for him last year, and the program keeps ramping up, Daniel.
Yeah, and just like St. Jude, it seems to be growing every single year. I remember last year being in Minneapolis and doing a bike build, and I was like, man, this is cool. This is how you get people involved in the sport. Get them on the wheels, because once they're on, it's hard to get them off. So to see it come back this year and now grow to multiple multiple rounds of the series, that's a good sign for me. And it's good to see Ryan Dungey again involved the way he is. His heart's in the right place, and he's doing great things from the sport. but getting kids on wheels, Jason, you know how it is. Look at your kid. Look at my kid now. Once they're on it, they can't get off, and Ryan Dungey's playing a huge role in that.
Now, there's another way to promote Supercross, a completely different vibe, which is Barstool Sports. They're pretty edgy sometimes, but we got characters that can hang with that. Ken Roxon and Aaron Plessinger had a chance to go on the Barstool bus and rap a bit about dirt bike racing. Had to be an awesome bit of exposure for Supercross.
Yeah, think about how big Barstool Sports is and its reach now. And you said it. We had the right characters go on there to talk, because you could take any one of these riders. It would be cool for Supercross, but who's cooler than AP? I mean, come on, really. So to have him in there talking, I think was great. Kenny, of course, has been such an advocate for everything right now with everything he did at the Empire State Building and all the shows that he had to do. I mean, he's had a pretty heavy schedule, so to see him on there does not surprise me. Speaking of the schedule, the auction is now open. Supercrosslive.com/St. Jude. I just mentioned we were over $1 million in generated in revenue for St. Jude, and it's time to rev up again. The Supercross fans are the best. We crush it every year. In 2023, we got to bring it again.
Yep, so we're auctioning off all kinds of cool stuff, including a lot of signed jerseys and gear and plastic that the riders use in the New Jersey race. That one's unforgettable, so you definitely want to bid on those items. And a lot of things that we knew we'd have even before that. So check out the auction at the Supercross website, and it'll close right after Salt Lake City. So you got about 2 weeks to bid. Now, we were in the state of Tennessee, which isn't that rich for Supercross. It's only the second time we ever had a race in Nashville. But for motocross and Supercross riders in general, Tennessee does have a rich history with the Loretta Lynn's Amateur National, which takes place about an hour down the road from Nashville and has been taking place for 40 years. So this is so cool. They actually brought Loretta Lynn's family to the race, recognized them in opening ceremonies. They got to hang out and watch the race in a suite. That's awesome because they're celebrities. But even cooler, I thought this was a really neat idea. Anyone who was in the stands that has raced Loretta's before, and you know there's tons of Supercross fans that have, they had a chance to stand up and be recognized. I've never seen that at a Supercross before.
I thought that was really neat. Speaking of Loretta Lynn's, we are going to have the Pro Motocross Championship, which Loretta Lynn's hosted there in that 1 year. Was some fun events. But before we get to Pro Motocross, Jeffrey Hurlings is in the news. Obviously, he's in the news for a lot of reasons as being one of the fastest men on the planet, right? But no, it's the records. We talk about Eli Tomac's records all season long. How about Jeffrey Hurlings? 101, he ties it up, has a chance to break it. And I'm only mentioning him because the Pro Motocross Championship's coming up. There's this race called Southwick. My fingers are crossed. They're going to stay crossed until then. Maybe we see him, maybe we don't. But hey, 101, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, we talked about that about a month ago. There is not a conflict to the MXGP schedule. They have an open date that Southwick weekend. Jeffrey has talked about wanting to ride Southwick because he's a sandmaster many, many times. That'd be amazing. And then there's a few other open dates. He could actually qualify for the SuperMotocross World Championship. He could, if he showed up 3 times, the open dates he has. So yes, fingers are crossed. Come on, Jeffrey Hurlings, and congrats on tiring the great Stefan Everts in GP wins. And if you want to go to Pro Motocross, just go to the ProMotocross.com website. Tickets are available now. Again, it's the end of May. We'll have the kickoff starting in Southern California and then work our way from west to east as this championship unfolds. And then we'll get ready for the playoffs in September. And another rider getting ready to return in motocross. First, we heard that Dylan Ferrandis, the 2021 450 champ, he's going to forgo the rest of Supercross. He will be back for Pella, try to win back that title in 2023. Probably not being thought about enough. We remember Sexton and Tomac last year, but do not sleep on Ferrandis. And also good, Garrett Marchbanks was in Nashville saying he's going to be ready to go for the 250 class also.
You know, we were hoping to come back around New Jersey last week or Atlanta, but you know, just the wrist injury was a pretty big deal. So we just took the time, made a smart decision 2 weeks ago to just sit out Supercross and go straight in the outdoors. So we've been on outdoor prep for the past 5 weeks now. It's been going actually really well. Made some big steps these past 2 weeks, and looking really forward to that upcoming outdoor season.
That's good to hear. I actually had a chance to talk to the team about him and his recovery, and they said he's trimmed down a bunch, lost a bunch of weight. He's going to ride the 250 class this summer, unless something changes last minute. That's the last I've heard. They said he's done a lot of work to rehab, but also lose some weight. He's a big kid, man. He's super tall. He's strong, but they're trying to trim him up for the summer, and I think he's going to be sneaky good this summer, too. You got to remember, he was good last summer and had national number 35. I mean, you get a lot of points like that. It's because you've done a lot of good things on the track. So good to see him back. Had a terrible injury. The timing was just unbelievable for him. But he's back. He's getting stronger. I think he's going to be a sneaky good competitor this summer in Pro Motocross. And you know what else was cool, Weege? 23% of the premier class victories in this sport We're all sitting in the booth together. You bring in Jeremy McGrath, you line him up next to Ricky Carmichael and James Stewart. There's Todd Harris sitting there with him, but 23% all standing in one booth.
Yeah, I mean, really, you could argue the 3 biggest names ever in the sport, maybe the 3 most successful riders ever in the sport. And then for good measure, I mean, we know Ryan Dungey was hanging out in a suite next door, and why not bring Eli Tomac up in the elevator? We could have got ourselves to about 50% of the Supercross wins right there. It's one of the neat things about this sport because everyone competes at the same track on the same weekend at the same time. The greatness is, I guess, a little more recognizable in this sport. So to get MC in there, and he's pretty outspoken as well. You know, when you get him in the booth, he has some really interesting things to say. So fast man on the planet, greatest of all time, king of Supercross. It's an awesome combo. And good job by Todd Harris keeping that all in check. So that was really cool. But again, Nashville, I go back to what we said at the top of the show. It was kind of all over the map. As great as some things were, it was also Crashville. Not just the web crash, a big one for Justin Barcia. Jason Anderson was down over and over and over. It was rough on some of the top riders.
Yeah, and I think as fans, Jason, obviously we work in the industry, but at our core, we're fans. And when you see anybody get hurt and go down, you hate it. But there's certain days that just, whether it's the track or the timing or just some bad voodoo, I don't know. But that one had it. And you're right, it took down Barcia, it took down Webb. Those are the premier guys that I think, you know, obviously suffered the most. But if you go down to the 250 class and even down into practice, guys had a tough time there. And I think that's a combination of the way that track developed, daytime race. Like you said, a lot of energy in the building. Everyone was really fired up to get there. But then, yeah, one by one, we saw the guys go down. And it's unfortunate. Hopefully, Barcia will be back for the Pro Motocross Championship. Webb's already announced he's going to be out for some time. But Nashville, yeah, Nashville, Crashville, I don't know what you want to call it, Nash Vegas. I mean, we can call it a lot of different things, but at least in 2023, it was Crashville. Ken Roczen was one that did not crash in Nashville. In fact, Jason, I'd like to just kind of talk about something different with Ken Roczen that popped up in the post-race press conference and on the podium. He mentioned that when the track is a certain way, it kind of scares him, gives him a little flashbacks to 2017, the big crash he had. And I've always kind of wondered if that was the case with him when the track gets like that. And on a day where he was very, very good, he admitted that that track spooked him and made him have those flashbacks of 2017. Were you surprised by that?
Yeah, I was, because we've seen plenty of races where we were left scratching our heads over, oh, why did Kenny fade, or why wasn't he as good as he was the last week, or something like that. And he never alluded to any of that, any flashbacks of that brutal crash, which really changed his career. So now we know, surely it's not just Nashville now. Surely this has happened in the past, and he just hasn't admitted it. But to take that point further, I thought it was really interesting to hear veterans like Roczen and Tomac in the press conference talk about how they managed that race. They didn't win the race, but they certainly lived on to be back next weekend. And I think that gave you a little bit of insight in how the veteran riders think. Kenny alluded to that. He's just a lot more patient than he used to be. And it's been a patient journey for the Lawrence brothers. As I alluded to at the top of the show, I think it's very easy right now to see that everything is rolling the Lawrence brothers' way. The money, the fame, the publicity, and the race wins and titles. But that was not a guarantee 4 years ago, 5 years ago. I mean, they were living in obscurity and honestly poverty when they moved from Australia to Europe to try to find a way and eventually get to the United States. And both you and I asked some questions of Hunter in the press conference, and he explained all of that.
Can't say I dreamed of it as a kid, because it was something I just watched on TV when you're a kid, especially in Australia. The sport's not that big there. You know, you kind of don't realize that you could have a career doing this, and you're like, you know, like dad works and you're just going to get a normal job. That's kind of how life is. So it's only really, you know, since I left Australia to Europe that I was like, oh man, I'd love to do this one day or achieve it. But yeah, as a kid growing up, it was never like, oh dude, I want to be an AMA Supercross champion. It was just like the guys you'd watch on TV, get friends over on a Saturday night. It was just like so far away. So yeah, it's crazy.
And after that press conference, it was the celebration at the Honda truck, which was cool. They actually had DJ KO set up. Of course, they were playing Tool. That's Hunter's favorite band. He has been very outspoken about how much he loves the band Tool. But it was a cool vibe. Everyone got in to give speeches. It was cool to hear Dazzy give his speech. It was obviously very mature. Jet gave his speech. It was obviously the polar opposite of that. But it was just cool to watch everybody celebrate the moment. For me, Hunter's mechanic, that was my favorite speech of all of them, but that's because it was the one that was hardest to get the words out. He was pretty emotional, but the celebration was cool. It was classy, and it was for a classy guy. Hunter Lawrence has been very good this year. He's been good on the podium too. and they nailed the celebration. It was perfect.
Yeah, they nailed it. And that also served as a little bit of a rehearsal because they might be doing it again at the same rig this weekend in Denver, because it seems almost assured that Jet Lawrence will do what Hunter did. So we bring 250 West back this weekend. It's going to be tough to rip the championship out of Jet's hands. So I think what we're looking at now is RJ Hampshire second in points. Can he finally get a win this year? And Enzo Lopes is actually third in points. So a few other things to watch also in 250 West. But it looks like we're going to be handing out another number one plate soon.
Yeah, this one isn't as guaranteed as Hunter's. Hunter just had to get 20th, pretty much roll around. In fact, 3 laps from the end, Hunter had actually clinched the championship because he had lapped so far up. So don't tell him that, but the last 3 laps, Hunter, you had already won it. Just want to let you know that. But no, for Jet, it's going to be a little bit tougher than that, but still, he will probably take care of business and do the same thing. So I'm with you. It's RJ Hampshire. Can you win this season? He's been so good. Enzo Lopes, Max Volan's all of a sudden starting to warm up a little bit. So I think I'm with you. I'm more intrigued by what's going to happen behind Jet than just another championship round, which would be his 4th straight, which is pretty incredible.
Okay, it's been a historic season for Hunter Lawrence in the 250 class. We're going to find out how historic it actually is by bringing in our statistician, Clinton Fowler, for Fowlers Facts. So we know with winning all but 2 races this year and being on the podium in every round and actually having a shot to score the most points ever in this class, Hunter Lawrence's season is really, really good. So Clinton, dive into the data. Is it the best? Where do you think it stands?
Yeah, Hunter's had an amazing season, Weege. Not the best, but close.
Okay.
Got to talk about a few things first. The undefeated seasons. We got 2 of them. And there's a little bit of a differentiation here. Carmichael, 9 for 9 in 1988. So that one unequivocally
98.
at the top of it.
Yep.
98. Yep. James Stewart, 2004, also went undefeated, but he missed 1 round. He missed the Indianapolis round. I actually asked him about it. He said he probably could have raced that night, but he didn't. And so undefeated, but he didn't line up for one of the rounds. Daniel, both of these guys undefeated. That's just ridiculous, right?
Yeah, and for the 04 season with Stewart, it was Josh Hansen who got that win in Indy. I remember that because I knew Josh as a kid, and I was like, wow, Hanny got his win. But yeah, I just look at those 2 seasons, and it makes you think, how do you win them all? Like, it's one thing to go on a run, but it's to never lose one, period. With all the variables we see, every single week, the things that happen in that class, to win them all is absolutely crazy. So Clinton, I know those guys weren't rookies, though. They had already been in there. I think Ricky was his 2nd year, maybe James's 2nd or 3rd year as well. How about some rookie performances? Tell me about some of the best rookie performances in 250 or 125 history.
Yeah, I mean, amazing that they're undefeated, but rookies to come in and win. I mean, guys, imagine if Deegan had lined up, okay, and won his first race as a premier class guy or podiumed as a premier class guy. The list of rookies here, Damon Bradshaw is the one I'll call out first. Bradshaw started his rookie year by racing in the premier class and got a podium, a 3rd place, and then went on to win the first 3 races in the 125 class. So Bradshaw for me sticks out, but there's 3 other guys. There's Kennard, there's Chad Reed, Ernesto Fonseca that all won their championships in the rookie year. Pretty impressive.
Yeah, Trey Kennard is an impressive one for me because it was so unexpected. I knew of him as an amateur. Like, said he was fast, he was coming up, had the potential to be pretty good. And then Jason, he wins that rookie season in dramatic fashion. I mean, come on. Nothing tops that one for me because, again, it was someone that wasn't expected to be that great that early and then went in there and won the thing.
Yeah, Ernesto Fonseca, that was a silent assassin. I don't think anyone saw that coming. He won the first 4 rounds he ever entered. It's impressive. And then he won another title 2 years later. So Ernesto was really good in this class and as a rookie. But I see Chad Reed on here. This is what stands out to me, the Chad Reed rookie season. He wasn't even impressed with himself doing that. I remember the first race he won. I was there in Indianapolis. I think it was 2002. And in his podium speech, he says, yeah, but it's not the premier class or the 250 class at that time. So it doesn't really matter. And then the crowd instantly was like, wait, is he already comparing himself to like Ricky Carmichael, who's the defending champ? He's not going to go after that guy. And a year later he was. And he was actually beating Carmichael at times. So that's what stands out to me. Chad Reed, so confident that winning as a rookie didn't even really matter to him. So I find that kind of very Chad Reed-like in a way. Okay, so Clinton, you're putting the undefeated seasons and the rookie championships ahead of Hunter. What other seasons stand out that maybe Hunter does measure up to?
Yeah, so those 6 seasons to me, guys, it's just tough to compare, right? Like those are just exceptions.
Yeah.
So he's going to be somewhere in this next group of people. There's like 7 or 8 guys here. Denny Stevenson in 1990, Wyndham in 96, Henry 93, Swink, McGrath, Tedesco, Ryan Villapoto. They all had seasons that were right around where Hunter sits, right? 7 to 9 wins, pretty impressive. The key thing I think's critical now for Hunter to really solidify him in this next group of people is winning an East-West shootout, or excuse me, a showdown. And that's going to be critical because when you bring the coast together, you're going to get the top talent and the pressure gets raised. And guys, we've got one more. We've got one coming up here in 2 rounds, and there's an opportunity for him to solidify it there. So I think that's going to be the differentiator of whether or not he's 7 on this list and kind of compares to a Denny Stevenson who won 8 of 11 or a Wyndham who won 6 of 7, or if he stays more at the 11 or 12 rank there.
And Clinton, when I look at that list, I see a name that I remember living through those championships. That's Ivan Tedesco. And once he hit Pro Circuit Kawasaki, it's just something changed with him. He just became dominant. And I remember he was almost unbeatable, heat races, main events. And so to see him on that list, Jason, is not surprising to me because those 2 years, I mean, those are the Tedesco years. He just was borderline unbeatable.
Yeah, and related to that, what stands out to me is the Swink McGrath years. They actually both won titles East and West in 91 and equally dominant, as you can see here, in 92. But here's why I bring up both of them. They were considered equals. I bet you there was many people, including Jeremy McGrath himself, that would talk about the talent and potential Brian Swink had. He ended up not winning a single Premier Class Supercross ever, and McGrath went on to win the most ever. And that's the jumping off point here. We look at this class as what is it telling us, not just about the present, but the future. And I thought it was interesting that even Hunter himself brought that up. They mentioned his race win stats in the class in the press conference on Saturday, and he said, you know what? No one ever talks about the all-time 250 class wins. They talk about Premier Class. So even he knows this all doesn't matter too much till you get in the main class. So that was great foresight by him. One other topic I know you want to bring up is the fact that Hunter is from Australia, and there's rich history there for international riders in this class.
Yeah, and Weege, I gotta take that that point on winning in the Premier Class because there's really only one guy on this list that's won in both the 125, 250 class and in the Premier Class, and that's Chad Reed. So yeah, Chad Reed is one of these 12 international riders, Hunter now being on that list, that has won a small bike championship. So Jet, his brother, Dylan Ferrandis, Marvin Muskin, Christoph Purcell, Ken Roxon, Ben Townley, Grant Langston, Reed Fonseca, Stefan Ricotta, Mikael Pichon. Those guys, the 12 athletes, have won 16 titles, incredible group of international talent that's come over and won Supercrosses. But really there's been now 3 Australians, Chad Reed, Jet Lawrence, and Hunter, that have won the small bike class. And so to Hunter's point, to your point, Weege, now we get to see, can they move up to the big boy class? Can they win that? But before then, both of them have an opportunity, Daniel, to win the SMX Playoffs, the inaugural SMX Playoffs this fall.
Yeah, and the way Hunter's riding right now, you would think he'd roll into the Pro Motocross Championship, be great there, and then roll into the SMX Playoffs and be great there. And I'm just throwing this out there to make all you Lawrence haters really upset right now. But there's a decent chance that Jet could win that too. I'm telling you right now, he's going to be good this summer. He'll have 11 rounds to get warmed up. He won't feel like a rookie by the playoffs. Oh, could you imagine the internet meltdown if Hunter and Jet both win the SMX Playoffs in year one? I'll be off the internet for a couple days. I will not want to read anything.
Look, folks, the Lawrence brothers, they're getting the praise the old-fashioned way. They're earning it by winning a lot of races and a lot of titles. So keep on watching. All 31 SuperMotocross World Championship events can be streamed domestically. That's here in the U.S. on Peacock. To subscribe, go to peacocktv.com/sports/SuperMotocross.
And for the fans of Super Motocross, they'll have a chance to watch it all year long on Peacock, NBC, and USA Network.
And for the international fans, you can join in the fun by getting the Super Motocross Video Pass. Go to supermotocross.tv to purchase access to every moment of the 2023 Supercross season, the Pro Motocross season, and of course Super Motocross live events in one place. Plus, get over 800 plus hours of archived races.
Okay, that's just about a wrap here for this episode of SMX Insider. We're heading to Denver this weekend. It'll be 3:30 Eastern time, the start of Race Day Live on Peacock, and then 9 o'clock Saturday night Eastern will be the start of the night show racing, again, on Peacock. But before we go, last chance. Didn't have the normal crazy action in the LCQs at Nashville, but we want to give a shout out to Garrett Hoffman making his first ever main in the 250 class.
It's awesome, man. Anytime you make your first main event, it's such an accomplishment. You've dreamed about it your whole life as a kid. And then from there, you want a top 15 and a top 10, a podium, a win, someday a championship. But it always starts with that first main event. So shout out to Hoffman for getting it done. That was awesome, especially in the LCQ. That's so stressful. And for Josh Cartwright, shout out for making the main, man. Shout out that you got to go to the last chance qualifier and get a second chance at it because...
Dude.
What? I hate it. I love Josh. Josh is my friend, and I respect him so much. But Josh, what are you doing?
Yeah, that was one of the all-time misplays of a cat and mouse protect the line in the last turn in the heat race. I mean, he literally just let Max Miller go around him. I actually saw Josh hanging out in Nashville Saturday night, and he's just like, I know, man. I know. So he didn't qualify to the heat, but he did get through the LCQ. So he's like, I can only laugh about it now. Bummer for him. This guy's never let us down. And speaking of that, I just want to shout out the PulpMX Yamaha Privateer Challenge will be taking place Friday in Denver. So as much as we hate to give props to our buddy Steve Mathis, you can go to pulpmx.com and you can still donate, get in the raffle to win a Yamaha YZ450F, and the money will go into the prizes for the privateers on Friday. So more LCQ love there. That's it for our show, Daniel. Can't wait to be in Denver. It's going to be fun.
That's not it for our show. There's one other race in Denver that's probably the most important one, and that's the debut of young Weigandt, who, fortunately for him, will have someone else working on his bike this weekend. So have fun, Jason. It's a great experience with the KTM Juniors, but young Weege finally getting a good bike.
Yeah. My son Lane will be in the KTM Junior Supercross Challenge this weekend. I studied the race very closely from the floor at Nashville to see how it worked, but here's the difference. All those dads were freaking out. They said, I think I'm more nervous than the kid. The moment we walk down that tunnel and KTM takes it from there, I'm going to be the most relaxed person in the house because that means I already did my job. If we're there, we're good. It's all about the experience, not the result. We'll see you there, everybody, in Denver, or be sure to watch on Peacock. Thanks for watching SMX Insider.